Okay, we're going to talk about supporting ideas, which is something you're going to need in your informational and persuasive speeches. And I hope you looked up saw the video on the difference between informative and persuasive speeches. But you're going to need to support your ideas either way. So you can pull up the supporting ideas um, on slide 2. Let's say here's a great thesis statement. You might want to mark this down in your notes that it's the supporting ideas PowerPoint, slide 2, thesis. Although the deserts of the world have many similarities, they are vastly different in terms of temperature, vegetation, and size. Great thesis statement. Now I know you're going to tell me about the similarities and differences between deserts of the world. The 3 topics for the body paragraphs will be temperature, vegetation, and size. I want you to know that you should be spending approximately the same amount of time on each main point. You don't want to have a 6-minute speech where you have 1.5 minutes on temperature, 1 minute on vegetation, and 4 minutes on size. It needs to be even. Okay. What kind of supporting evidence would you need for a body paragraph on the difference in temperature in deserts around the world? That's what you have to ask yourself. Here's another thesis. Columbus was the world's first imperialist as he claimed political, cultural, and economic control in the Americas. So the topics for the 3 body paragraphs will be Columbus claimed political control, Columbus claimed cultural control, and Columbus claimed economic control. So where are we going to look for supporting evidence about that? And I want you to see that these main points that are going to be in the body are in the same order that they are in the thesis statement. Because remember, it's a roadmap. You're telling your audience where you're going. So now on our trip, we're going to go first to political control. Okay? Slide 4. Question, is Austin a good place to live? Thesis. Families and singles should move. Now this is a persuasive because we've got should in our thesis statement. So I'm going to now try to convince you that you should settle in Austin because it's a good place to live. So families and singles should move to Austin because of the outstanding university, beautiful Lady Bird Lake, and delicious Mexican food. Main point number 1, University of Texas. Supporting evidence. It has $400 million for research every year. That means it brings a lot of people in. Library system is one of the top 10 research libraries in the nation. And in 2002, Sports Illustrated ranked UT number 1 of the nation's athletic programs. Of course, we're not in 2002 right now, we're in 2020. So we're going to want to get more recent supporting ideas. This doesn't mean anything to me anymore because it was 18 years ago. What is it now? Okay, so look for good recent information. So what can we use? We can use examples as our supporting material, statistics, testimony. You can get an expert to give you information, and as I've said, your librarians are super. They can tell you which person on campus, which professor on campus can help you out on this. Number 6, an example is a specific case to use to illustrate the idea. Types of examples. We have brief, extended, and hypothetical. Again, hypothetical is something that can get you into trouble if you're not careful. If you don't let the audience know that it's just a made up imaginary, let's suppose. Okay, that's fine. You can do that. Just make sure the audience knows that this is not a real thing that happened. A brief example is a specific case referred to in passing to illustrate a point. An extended example might be a story or narrative or anecdote developed at length to illustrate a point. And as I have said, stories, stories, stories. People love stories. That will keep your audience's attention because they want to know how it started. And once you start it, they want to know what happened next. And then they sure want to know how it ended. That keeps their attention. A hypothetical example is an example describing a fictitious hypothetical situation. Tips for examples. Clarify the ideas. They reinforce the ideas. They personalize the ideas. Perhaps you were in a situation. We saw I asked you to watch a speech where the girl had a mother who died of ALS. And so she was using her situation with her mother to describe ALS. Very good idea. Made it very, very personal. Make vivid and richly textured. They add texture to your speech. Practice their delivery to enhance it because you're going to need to use vocal variety if you're talking about a personal situation. Statistical measures. I'm sure you know mean, median, and mode. If you don't, look them up. The mean is the average value of a group of numbers. If you have 10 numbers, you add them all up and then divide by 10. That gives you the mean or the average. The median is the middle figure in a group once figures are ordered highest to lowest. And the mode is the number occurring most frequently in a group. Let's see where I am here. I've got enough time. Tips for statistics. Use them to quantify ideas. Use them sparingly because although they can be great as an attention getter, it's difficult for people to remember statistics. So what we ask you to do is round them off. I'm not going to remember 23,792 and 53 cents. I'm not going to remember that. So I don't even remember how I started that, so I can't even tell you how to round it off. Anyway, identify your sources. Always identify your sources of statistics. Explain them thoroughly and use visual aids if needed. And be honest with your statistics. There was many years ago, when I was a kid growing up, Crest toothpaste had an ad that said 3 out of 4 doctors recommend Crest. And you go, wait a minute, do they mean 75%? Or do they mean that they had 4 dentists and 3 of them said it was okay? What are they doing there? Okay, be very honest. It could also have said 75%, but you have to let the audience know 75% of what? Only 4 dentists? Well, isn't very high praise. Testimony, quotations or paraphrases used to support the point. Expert testimony, that's even better. Testimony from recognized experts, and we have many at Troy. And I try to get my students to contact professors. They love it. They really do. They don't consider you a pest. Just if you write them an email and say, I would love to be able to use your testimony or quote you in a speech that I'm giving on such and such idea, would you mind answering this question so I could use your quote, blah, blah, blah. They love it. Peer testimony. testimony from ordinary people with firsthand experience or insight. That could be, I don't know, if you're talking about conditions in the dorm, you might want to go and sample not just the people in your dorm, but in other dorms, that sort of thing. Direct quote, testimony presented word for word. If you're going to do this, you must say the quote, give us some air quotes and say them. Give the person's name before you give the quote. Okay, you introduce the person's name. Sam Jones said this in the New York Times in 1972, quote, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Out of context quote, distorting a statement by removing words, phrases around it, not ethical. I teach ethical speech delivery. You don't really win an argument by lying. And you're not going to feel good about it, and the people who leave are going to be scratching their heads and saying, that didn't sound right. Looking it up, and you then have a reputation as a liar, and I don't want my students to do that. Quickly here, paraphrase, restating the source's ideas in your own words. Quote, paraphrase accurately. Don't put words in somebody's mouth. Use qualified sources. Use unbiased sources. Don't use the Tobacco Institute to verify that smoking is okay. That's because they have a dog in the fight, if you know what I mean. Identify sources. Cite your sources orally, the name of the document, the author or sponsoring organizations, qualifications, date. And here's how you would do an oral citation. Kenneth Chang, science reporter for the New York Times, reported in the paper's March 13, 2011 issue that the recent quake in Japan widened the country by 13 feet. It also tilted the Earth's axis and shortened the day by a couple millionths of a second. Wow, that's astounding. But that's how you give an oral citation. Okay, that's it for today.